Hi, my name is Ashley, and if you saw my home tour, then you saw this cute little cushion, which we make for our brand called Cool and Brown. I'm going to show you how to make a cushion like this for your home today using a process called rug hooking or punch needling. So let's get started. So first we're going to start with the materials that you need, and you're not going to need a lot. This is a really simple and easy process, and I'm going to show you as we're working together a few of the little tips so that you're successful at what you make. So the first thing you're going to need is a backing cloth. We use all different types of backing cloth, but my favorite is monk's cloth. You want to use something that's easy to see through. If you can see those cute little squares and see your fingers or your hands behind it or underneath it, then you've got the type of cloth that's going to give you the best results. The next thing you're going to need is an embroidery hoop. We love round cushions over at Cool and Brown, and the hoop that you want to use is a non-slip hoop. This particular craft is the art of tension, and what you want to make sure you do is keep your project inside the loops. So we love non-slip hoops because they have these interlocking features that make sure that your projects stay inside the hoop. So non-slip hoops, don't forget it. The next thing you're going to need is yarn. I use any type of yarn, acrylic yarn, wool yarn, any kind of yarn. I like to use thicker yarn. That's kind of my secret. So that way I get done with my projects a lot faster. If you're going to be using your projects as a rug, like something you're going to be walking on, then make sure you use a rug yarn. You definitely don't want to be ruining your projects by walking over top of yarn that's going to fall apart a little bit faster. The next thing you're going to need is a punch needle. I stand by, live by the Amy Oxford number 10 regular punch needle. I have used all the different types of needles there are, and nothing comes close to like the way you can hold it in your hand. It is really, really easy to load front to back. And honestly, nothing comes close. You can use it with thicker yarns, thinner yarns. You can also use this needle to punch with different types of fibers like jute or twine or even plastic. Some people even use old t-shirts. Anything that you can make into strips and use for in place of your yarn is good. So the Amy Oxford number 10 punch needle, you will not need anything else, trust me. So your last couple of tools are scissors, and it's actually important that you get the right type of scissors so that way you're not fraying your monk's cloth. I like to get really good, sharp fabric scissors to cut my monk's cloth. That way you get clean breaks and you don't have to worry about things really fraying when you're doing all your stretching. And with embroidery scissors, you can get really close and deep down with these little, really tight little ends. So embroidery scissors, fabric scissors, and a marker of any kind. I just use a basic Sharpie to do all of my doodles and drawings. So let's start. All right, so I've talked about rug hooking as the art of tension, and some people ask like, where's the glue? How do you keep your loops from slipping out? As long as your backing cloth is tight, every single thing will fall into place. So the first thing I'm going to do with my non-slip hoop is get my monk's cloth over the inner ring. And then just get that outer ring on there and give yourself enough space on each side of the ring. All right, so right now, this is not the ideal tautness. You want this to sound almost like a drum, and we're not there yet. So what I like to do is flip this over and start pulling all the way around. And you want to pull tight, and as you make your way around, make it tighter. You want to get almost to where these two things are touching each other. Remember, if you want to keep those loops in and you want to keep your project from sliding, this is all about tightness. All right, so let's try it. Almost. You can also rug hook on things like stretcher bars with the monk's cloth stretched across with carpet tacks. I've seen people use picture frames. You can use just about anything. All right. Oh yeah, that's what we want. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is our design. So I am really, really inspired by Matisse-like shapes and also circles and just weird things like, I don't know, different groupings and pairings, little dots and things like that. You can also cut out shapes and put them down if you're not used to freehanding yet, but you can do also really simple things like checkers, polka dots, whatever makes you happy. I love Matisse shapes, so I'm just gonna make my favorite little blobby blobs They feel very SpongeBob-y. And your shapes don't have to be perfect because as you're punching, you're gonna make your own lines anyway. So play around with shapes, lines, whatever makes you feel good. Make donuts, make X's, make half moons, make E's, make Y's, whatever feels good. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to load up your needle, and to save yourself a little bit of a headache, you want to make sure you do one thing. Give yourself a lot of room. Sometimes you'll find that when you're punching through, your loops will start to slip out, and usually that means you haven't given yourself enough of a tail and it's a little too tight on the end. So make sure you give yourself a lot of space. So we're going to go through the eye like this, pull through, and then literally pull through the slit. I'm going to pull up to get it to go in and then pull down to give myself just a little bit of a tail, and that's it. You're ready to go. So we're going to just punch through one of our lines, and it's a really simple process. Sometimes people get a little hung up on how far should their stitches be, how close should they be, how should they hold their needle. I personally hold my needle with my, of course, dominant hand and punch away from myself. If you're just starting out, just punch the way that feels most comfortable to your hand, kind of like handwriting almost. All right, so make sure that your needle goes all the way down to the bottom of the monk's cloth. That's really, really important. Because we talk about this being the art of tension, if you go all the way down to the bottom, when you pull back up, that monk's cloth is gonna hold that yarn tight, and then you can move on to the next stitch. I usually let my needle touch down to the next part of the line and then go down, up, and I'll just turn my embroidery hoop to go whichever direction. People are always like, how big should my stitches be? You can do larger stitches. The punch needles come with stitch gauges, so you can see that every inch should have about 3 or 4 stitches maximum. You can also see underneath here what it looks like when you're punching. Sometimes people like to flip it over and use the loop side. I personally like the stitch side. That's how I finish all my projects, with the stitch side. All right, so I'm just gonna punch another row, and you can see the loops sort of sticking inside the monk's cloth. So as long as your monk's cloth is really tight, the backing cloth gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you really can't pull these loops out. What I like to do with my projects though when I finish is cover the inside with Elmer's glue. That is helpful for when we're selling our products, to make sure that folks' projects don't come loose. Another thing that people ask is how can they be washed? And I like to spot wash mine. Some people do machine washing, especially if they make them out of rug yarn, which is much, much more durable, but just spot wash or spot cleanse. Or make projects that have darker colored yarns so they last a little bit longer. All right, so I'm just gonna show you what it's like to pull this out and move on to another color. I just hold down and pinch, pull my needle up, and then use my embroidery scissors to cut really close so you can never see where I started or where I ended. And then I also use the ends to like tuck it in. And you can keep filling in, or you can switch to another color, whatever makes you happy. And then what I do is pull them off the embroidery hoop, add a backing cloth, sew it, stuff it, and then we have a cushion. Super cute, very original, and unique to your home.
Hi, I'm Rajiv. I have recently been binding my own books. One of the supplies that's often used in classic bookbinding is marbled paper. So that's what we're going to do today. We are going to try to marble some paper. If we encounter problems, that's okay. Don't be scared. We'll figure it out together. Paper marbling has a long history that goes back to Japan, to I think the 8th century. It reached Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries, and the images that we have of workshops in France are fascinating. I have some watercolor tubes here that I'm going to use for marbling today, but I also have some ground pigment from Turkey that is actually the stuff that they use for paper marbling in Turkey, where they've been marbling paper for centuries. So either way, these paints need to be thinned down. The thing about mixing these colors is they have to be very strong. They can't be too watery. If they're too watery, the color is going to be very thin on the surface of the vat, and it'll appear very faded on the paper. So you want this to be quite strong. I'm using distilled water. You don't have to use distilled water, but I just like to be safe. So I'm going to start out with my palette knife, and then I'm going to switch to just a cheap hog hair bristle brush, just to make sure that all those chunks are evenly mixed. I think this is a good consistency. We'll see. This brush can now live in this color because we've mixed it up. I'm going to clean off my palette knife. Don't be sloppy. My nickname in high school, my sculpture teacher, Mrs. Burke, gave me a nickname, Princess Make a Mess, because I always left a mess in the sculpture room, so I have tried to get better at cleaning up my mess. But we're gonna get messy today. This is a messy process. Splattering paint everywhere. Okay, palette knife clean. Next color. Oxide red. Yeah. Princess Make a Mess strikes again. Usually the color that you want in every mix is black because it's very dramatic. Put a little bit of the Irish green in this pot here. If you're adding water to paint, it is much better to add it in tiny increments. Sometimes you'd be shocked at how far a little bit of water will go. Irish green, like the hills of Kilkenny. Now I have all my colors mixed up. It's time to prepare the bath. Very traditional paper marbling entails using some strange materials like ox gall. Ox gall is a liquid that is actually extracted from the bile of bovine animals. Yes, true. You mix the ox gall with the colors, and then when you drop the color onto the bath, it kind of goes like this. Ox gall is really, really important for this process. You don't need very much though. You only add a few drops to your colors. So a small bottle like this will go a long way. Another very important ingredient in the marbling process is carrageenan moss, or carrageen moss, or carrageen. I don't know how it's pronounced. Anyways, there's this stuff, the powdered extract of carrageen moss. You just mix a couple tablespoons of this with some warm water. I use an immersion blender, and you let that cool. I put it in a jug like this overnight to allow the bubbles to kind of disappear, because it'll be full of bubbles when you blend it all together, and you don't want bubbles in your bath. The temperature of the bath and the consistency of the liquid that you make with this stuff is really, really important. It can't be too cold, otherwise it could gel up like Jell-O and it'll be too thick. It can't be too hot, otherwise it will be runny and your colors will kind of run all over the place. It can't be too thick, otherwise your colors won't really spread. And it can't be too thin, otherwise the colors will go like this. And you won't end up with marbled paper. So just try. Make a batch, put it in a small tray, try your colors out. If it doesn't work and you think that it's because it's too thin or too thick, then you adjust it. If it's too thin, you mix up some more of this that's thicker and you add it to the bath and mix it in. If it's too thick, then you add warm water to the bath and swish it around with your hand, and that will thin out the surface. And the third most important thing in this process is something called alum. Alum, I think, is used in like pickling. I think. You can get it in certain grocery stores in the spice aisle. You add a little bit of this to some water, you bring it to a boil, you let it cool down, and then you have a clear solution like this. This solution is going to be rubbed onto the paper, and it is used to mordant the paper. Alum in this situation is called a mordant. Mordant in French means biting, mordant. It's vital that you mordant the paper, because if you don't put alum on the paper and you lay the paper down on the bath, when you lift it up, it will be very pretty, but when you go to rinse off the slimy sludge from the vat, the colors will run off too. And trust me, I've done that before, and it's so disappointing. It's so disappointing to see a beautiful pattern on a piece of paper and then, I have my tray, and into this tray, I am going to pour the prepared moss solution. And this is called size. Once it's mixed up like this thick liquid is, the term for this would be marbling size. It needs to be thick enough that the colors stay on the surface and don't spread out too much, and that they don't sink, but it can't be so thick that it prevents the spreading of the colors. And when this is not being used, cover it. You don't want dust to settle on the surface. The paper that you use for paper marbling ideally should be cotton paper, or should have some cotton content to it. We're going to be washing this paper, and it's going to be wet for quite a while, so it should be durable enough to withstand all of that water. If it has cotton in it, it's like cloth, and it will do very well. You also want the paper to be the right thickness. It shouldn't be too thick. You should be able to move it around. And now I'm going to mordant the paper with the alum solution. Start with one piece of paper, mark an X on the back of the sheet. That's really important because we're going to have to remember which side came in contact with the alum when we're laying it down on the bath. So I've marked an X on the back, flip it over. I have a little tray here with a natural sea sponge. The books say that this process should ideally be done with a natural sponge. I'm going to just give this a stir in case there's any little bits that have settled. Alum sometimes crystallizes when it's left alone. Okay. So get this sponge saturated, and then start on one corner and really look at it in the light and make sure that the whole piece of paper is wet. It's very important that the alum comes in contact with all of the paper. If there are any bits that don't have alum on it, they will not hold the color. Great. So let's set that over here. And then the next sheet, mark our X, flip it over, put the alum on, and then this gets laid on that first sheet, alum side to alum side. We're going to create a little stack. So wear some clothes that spark joy, but that you're not afraid of throwing away afterwards. Wear your ratty clothes and an apron, because you want to be able to like splatter the colors freely, and they might get all over the place. Add ox gall to our colors. Just start with a couple drops in each color. You can always add more. The more ox gall you add, the more the colors will spread. If you add too much, they'll spread out too thin and the colors will be weak. So that's why we start with just a couple drops. Remove the very top layer of the bath. This is essential because the surface tension of this bath is vital to this whole process. Now we're going to test a little drop of black. Nice! It's spreading, but it's not going like crazy. You want it to spread like a tiny drop of black initially should spread 2 to 3 inches. This is pretty good. Now let's test out our other colors and see how they spread. Look, no spreading. Okay, this is good. This is good. Now I can show you. I am going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of ox gall. See? I love it. Okay, great. Last color, green. Sinking. Okay, it's spreading, but it's sinking, which means it is too thick. Just add a wee bit of water to our Irish green. Now that all my colors are floating, we are ready to start marbling. We skim the surface with our newspaper to clean off the paint. And you want to lift it up at the end, pull it off. And now, immediately lay down your color. Don't be afraid of spattering the paint. That. Get our paper. X is the back. So the other side is going to go down. You hold both ends diagonally and lay the paper down in as smooth a motion as possible. Get a little skewer to eliminate air bubbles. If air bubbles are underneath here, they will interfere with the color. Pick up one corner, slide it along the edge, and lay it in our tray. And now, very gently pour water on to wash off the size. What do we think? It's fun, right? Okay, now very carefully take this up and climb on the bed and don't slip. Hang this up to drip dry on the bed. We're going to do something that we didn't do last time. We're going to take a stylus and we're going to run it through the size. Wipe it off in between, and now we're going to go this way. Okay. I'm running it along the edge, skimming off that excess size along the edge. Okay, so that was the version pulling the stylus through. Hang him up. Okay, do we like that? Yeah, I think we do. So now we're gonna go with our stylus up and down. And then variation on from last time, comb just the surface. Don't go too far into the size. Breathe. I'm holding my breath. I want some splatters on top of here. You just kind of see it as you're going. You're like, this needs this, this needs this. That's better. Okay, paper, paper. X is the back. I like that one. Look at how nice the comb was. That $2 comb from the paint store. Oh, mio papino caro. I just think of Florence when I'm doing this. So, singing some Italian arias can't hurt. One more variation? Yeah, let's do it. We're gonna try something I have never tried before. It is called the peacock. Let's not put yellow on this time. Let's try a different colorway. I like that. Yeah, that's really nice. Oh, should we just put a little yellow on? It looks sad without the yellow. Fine, just a little bit. So these pegs are staggered. There's a row this way and then a row where they're in between. And ideally it creates what looks like peacock. No, it's not bad, but it's not what it's supposed to be. Very nice. This is the thrill of just diving in and going for it. I love this one. And because I was using gray paper, the gray of the paper is showing through and looks like one of the colors. And you can do that with any colored paper. You can use blue or pink paper and the blank areas will reveal that color. Don't touch that mahogany post with this wet paper. Let's make some more. It takes a few hours for these papers to drip dry. Once they're actually dry, you can take them down, stack them together, and put them under some weight. There's kind of a crucial period of time in which the papers have to be weighted. They have to be completely dry without being damp, so feel them every now and then gently, and when they're no longer damp to the touch, pull them down, stack them together, and put them under some weights. I just use a pile of heavy books, and that does the trick. In the morning, they will be flat and smooth, hopefully.
Hi, I'm Eric Kenneth Stahlberg, and if you've just seen my home tour, as a prop stylist, you'll know that I love collecting and curating items around my house. And one of the hardest things to style is a bookcase. So today I'm breaking down the basics. Let's get into it. To begin, the best thing you can do is take everything off the shelves. You want to clean everything, dust it, really make it sparkle, and now you have a blank canvas to work with. So once you take everything off the shelf, you can organize things by category: books, vases, art, things like that. And that will only make the process of rebuilding the shelves and restyling them that much easier. So a great tip to start is by making the same styled shelf on different sides of the bookcases at different heights, and that way you're only styling half the shelves and just duplicating the other half, and it just cuts your work in half. It's so much easier. So I always start with books. I feel like whether they're art books or novels, it creates a good height difference within the same shelf. So I often put a couple stacked and a little trinket on top, and it just gives a really clean visual for highlighting specific items. So after the books are in place, I always start with my biggest items first, and that's a great way to see what gaps are there, and also so there isn't too much weight or heaviness in the shelves. It just keeps things really balanced. So next, I always use trinket boxes. They're so good for stacking and again creating height variance, and they're so decorative and beautiful and store such nice little things. So whatever you do, don't forget to add plants. Making sure that there's a natural element, especially in a bookcase, can keep it from being too stiff, and making sure it feels organic and fresh. Also, always make sure there is some sort of element of art in your bookcases, whether that's, a small painting leaning on the back, or in my case, in these bookcases, all of my cherished family photographs. It's really good to make sure you're having some 2D elements mixed in with all your 3D objects. It just keeps things from being, too one note. So lastly, you're gonna take all of your small, tiny little trinkets that you don't know what to do, and these now are going to be peppered in throughout the bookcase. and they often become friends of bigger items, so they're not floating off in space. They have, you know, some security there. And it's great because it just keeps your eye moving. Again, we're balancing the height variance, and it really is a good way to display your smalls. Well, I hope these styling tips have helped you and maybe inspired you to rearrange your items in a new way. And I really appreciate you for stopping by. Thanks.
Here we go. We're gonna breathe in ocean blue, out mustard yellow. I cannot control this craft. However it turns out, it will be beautiful.
It will control me.
Yes, yes.
Control me.
Hey, I'm Dennis.
I'm Andrew.
Today we are going to be talking all about paint pour.
Now, if you're wondering what is paint pour, it kind of is exactly how it sounds. You pour paint onto something and it creates art.
It really does have a life of its own, so you have to kind of let go of any of that self-criticism and just let the magic happen.
Yes.
Let the paint pouring
Let the paint pouring begin.
So now paint pour has become so popular over the last couple of months that now they actually sell paint pour kits to make it really easy for you.
Yeah, and the great thing about having a paint pour kit is that they pick all the colors for you so they know what's gonna work and what's not. But the difference between, let's just say, acrylic paint and a paint pour that you already buy in a bottle is this is going to be a thinner paint, so it's going to be a little more fluid on the canvas. You can't just take acrylic and throw it onto a canvas or drip it onto a canvas. It's not going to do very much.
Yes, and actually we'll be showing how to do that later in this video.
Yes, so should we get started? I feel like sometimes it's easier just to kind of jump in instead of explaining things.
Yes.
First thing you want to do is put something on your table because the paint is going to drip. So you just want to make sure that you have paper underneath here. We have a couple of trash bags. You just want to make sure that it's not going to seep through. We're going to be paint pouring on a canvas today, and here is a pro tip. Flip over your canvas and use push pins. Put one in every corner, and that's just going to elevate the canvas a little bit so the paint doesn't puddle around the edge. You do want to make sure that your tacks are pretty level to each other because you do want to have a level surface just so your paint pour doesn't all drip to one side. Okay, this is a method called the dirty pour, and we're actually doing a dirty pour with a flip as well. This is a fun one. I think this is a really great beginner one because it gives like a great end result and it's really easy to do. Now for a dirty pour, you're gonna need a plastic cup, and what you're gonna do is we're gonna layer our paint into the cup. Now here's a good pro tip. When you start to layer your paint, just like if you were pouring a beer or a soda, tilt your cup a little bit. Yes. It's gonna allow them to kind of settle into each other and give you a layered effect instead of all kind of mixing into one.
How much paint are you
For a piece like this, we're gonna need about 2 ounces of paint. So I'm gonna try to eyeball it. That's about halfway. I might do a little more. I think it's always better to have a little more paint than a little less. And if you have extra paint, what you can do is do this in a jar and then seal the jar, and then it'll last for, I don't know, a while,
so your
right?
next paint
So your
pour
next paint pour.
project.
The more you layer, the more intricate your pour is gonna look in the end. So I like to take my time and just do a lot of layers. I am a little nervous. I feel like...
but that's what I'm saying. You got to let go of that. You can't control it, you know?
I know.
And beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So a piece to you that looks horrible might look so beautiful to someone else. And the best thing too about paint pour is that if you're not happy with the way it looks after it dries, you can do a new paint pour right on top of an old paint pour. So you don't have to run out and buy more canvases, start all over. You can just do it right on the same canvas.
Now, for a dirty pour, you could just pour this right on top of your canvas, but today we are going to do a flip method. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna...
It's actually called the flip cup method.
Is it?
Flip cup. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Still play it.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my canvas and put it on top and have the cup as centered in the canvas as possible. And then, okay, this is it, everybody.
This is it.
This is
Deep
it.
breath,
There's no
deep
going
breath.
back. Okay, ready? Okay. hand. As you see, it needs a little help. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start to move the canvas just so the paint covers the canvas.
There might be more in the cup too that you can just kind of sporadically like
Actually, that's
pour.
a good tip. You know, there is some in the cup. I'm gonna actually just do these corners. I would say the corners are the trickiest part of the canvas to get. So when you can just add a little, and you know, I'm not seeing a lot of the blue. Can you hand me the blue? Mm-hmm. Pour me a little blue, like right in here. I'm just gonna add it.
How long do you have to manipulate it before it starts to set up?
The great thing about paint pouring is you have a while. I would say you probably have a good 25, 30 minutes to just kind of play with it before it really starts to set.
You can see we get a lot of movement here from the paint. You know, so your instinct might be to fill up the cup completely, but you can see the paint is really moving. And of course you can always just add a little squirt here and there to fill in any spaces. I like this kit specifically because it reminds me of the solar system or outer space.
Yes. Also, when I saw this kit, I was like, these are not the colors I gravitate towards, but I'm really glad we picked it because it is, I think it's just like a really fun, psychedelic look. And this is not how it's gonna fully look. The paint pour, it really does take its course as it dries.
It looks good.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm not seeing any air bubbles in this, but we are going to add some heat just to get rid of the air bubbles. So what you want to do is put it on a low setting just so it doesn't shift the paint.
Yes, and we're actually using a hair dryer for this. We've seen a lot of people use a flame, a torch to kind of light it up quickly, but you get the same result with a heat gun or a hair dryer. The one thing is you just don't want to hold it in one spot. You know, you want to be moving it all around the painting like in a consistent
Yeah, and it doesn't need
movement.
much. It doesn't need much.
Just
Wait, that's high. There we go.
you can see the air bubbles coming up to the surface here. Looks good, right?
Yeah.
Once you're kind of done with your swirling and your movement, you want to set it in an area that's not going to get a lot of traffic because it will collect dust or cat hair. So if it's in a room, you can either cover it with a box or something like that, or
Yes.
you know, just put it in a room that
Doesn't have
really...
like a fan, doesn't have air conditioner.
There
Yeah,
you
you really
go.
just don't want it to get any dust. Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Clap.
That was terrifying. This looks so great. We're gonna set it aside to dry, but we already made one yesterday that came out looking so fabulous.
I
A
love
kit
this.
is great for beginners.
But we are going to step it up a notch. We're going to show you how to mix your own acrylic paint with paint pour medium so you can customize your own color palette.
Yes, we're even gonna use a new paint pour technique, and we also have a few other tricks up our sleeves. Huh? They're short sleeves. There's not that many tricks.
I looked up my sleeve as a joke.
Now you're going to see the real artist at work.
Where?
Oh, prove it. All right, now we're going to take it up a notch and we're going to be mixing our own paint pour medium. Really simple. They sell a pre-made pour medium that you just add to acrylic paint. This is acrylic paint that we got at the craft store, really inexpensive, a wide variety of different colors that you can use. When choosing colors, you want to keep it easy. You don't want more than 3 or 4 colors.
And if you're having trouble picking a color, think of things on the same side of the color wheel or colors that mix well together.
So when mixing your craft acrylic paint, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So we have 2 ounces of craft paint in here. So we want 2 ounces of paint pour medium. So I've already pre-measured. I know where my 2-ounce line is. So I'm just gonna pour all of my medium in the cup here. Now that we have our paint pour medium in the cups, it's time to add our paint. And like I said, we're doing a 1-to-1 ratio. So these are all 2 ounces. So you can start helping me there. And we wanna add all the paint to the cup. And you could uncap it too if you need to.
I like to squirt it.
And if you can, you want to kind of go slow here to reduce air bubbles. You know, you don't want a lot of air bubbles in your work. And actually, when you're mixing your own custom colors here, you are going to want to start with the base layer of white acrylic paint. So we actually have an extra cup here with the paint pour medium, and I'm going to add just plain white acrylic paint to it, the same 1-to-1 ratio, because that's where we want to start.
And you know, you don't have to add white, but it really does help the colors pop. So we really recommend it. I do think that's a good pro tip.
Yeah, so we're just going to mix this up and mix that up slowly.
Okay.
So we're just mixing these till we get a nice, smooth, consistent color. We don't want any lumps or bumps. All right, now to level up our paint pour a little more, we're gonna add what's called a silicone medium to each cup here. We only want about 3 to 4 to 5 drops in each cup. And this specific lubricant is a treadmill belt lubricant. It's just 100% silicone, and that's gonna really help bring out those beautiful cells and give our paint pour more dimension, more life, and it just really kind of amps up the piece.
Yes, because what the silicone's going to do, it's going to travel up and it's going to push the paint, so you're going to see paint underneath it.
Yeah, they call that in the paint pour world cells.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so just about 2 or 3 drops, 5 drops, and we're going to mix that up.
Nice and slowly again.
Yep. And I did not add it to the white. I just added it to my colors here.
And you could pick and choose which colors you want. They don't all have to have it, but why not?
Okay, so
good.
we're gonna start with our white layer here. I'm just gonna pour it, and for this paint pour, I'm doing what they call a Dutch style pour, which is essentially just kind of vibing with your paint pour, pouring it where you think it needs more color, and then just kind of keep going as you're working.
I like that.
Yeah.
And again, what this base color is going to do is it's going to help move all that paint around as we turn everything.
And the consistency you're going for when you're creating your own paint pour is you want like a chocolate syrup type of,
Yes.
or a warm honey type of consistency. And now I'm just using a brush just to kind of cover the entire canvas here from corner to corner, edge to edge with my white base layer. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now we're gonna paint pour.
Good luck.
Thank you. Here we go. Deep breath in, out. Rid yourself of self-criticism.
Yes, you have no
Go for
control.
it. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna start. And I'm just gonna swirl it right on, just cover this color.
Sure.
You know, you can kind of map this out ahead of time or just kind of go for it.
I don't know if it really matters too much.
You can kind of think of your paint pour here and, you know, kind of decide maybe you want an area that has a little more, you know, mustard color here, so you can pour a little more, maybe a little more in the center. You know, there's really no wrong way to do this. And as I'm pouring, I am trying to kind of avoid pouring directly over where I just poured. I want to pour in a space where there's, you know, not that much color there.
And that's just for this method, because there's plenty of methods where you pour directly on top of the last layer.
So now to help it along, we have our hair dryer. So I'm actually gonna give it a blast with the hair dryer on a cool setting just to kind of get the movement going, and then I'm gonna swirl it, swirl it, swirl it until it creates a masterpiece. Do you have to hold this? I wouldn't know how to use a hair dryer. Now we can kind of just see what we're working with here. And again, we just want to go for full coverage of our paint pour. And you could already see they have these beautiful cells from the silicone popping up. See all this here? That's
All
what they
those
call
circles, yeah.
cells. Yeah.
I feel like you need a lot of artistic ability to do that.
No, no. I feel like you need
Nope.
very little artistic ability. I think really picking the right colors is kind of half the battle, and then not over mixing it. So not, if you spin it too many times, it's gonna really just start to kind of get a little too muddy. So I think if you have a little control on that and you pick the right colors, I don't know if there's that much artistic ability involved with it. What do you think?
I agree. What'd you say? Awesome.
looks
So
really
once
good.
you're happy with the way it looks, we're actually going to take our hot setting and just kind of run it over like we did before to remove any air bubbles. And actually the heat of the hair dryer is really going to help bring out the cells from the silicone. And you know, the best tip is if it's not good, just tell people it's good and they'll believe you.
It's true. Tell people it's good.
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
This is so good. It actually is very beautiful.
It is.
No, I
Okay.
think it's cute. I think it's cute.
All right, so we're gonna let this paint pour dry for 24 hours, and remember, it's gonna do its thing while it dries, so it's not fully gonna look like this. Remember, don't have any air blowing on it so it doesn't get any dust particles or hair on it.
Yes, and once it dries, it looks something like this. So cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now that this is done, I would give it another 24 hours. The silicone is gonna rise to the top and it's gonna leave a little bit of a greasy residue. What you can do is take a paper towel with a little bit of dish soap and wipe it off and then wash it again with just a very little bit of water just so you get that greasy residue off. And then you can seal your work. Now this is optional. Sealing will bring the colors out a little bit more. It'll also give you a finish that is fully smooth if you have any indents like we do, but that's totally optional as well.
Yes, for us, the texture means it was made with love, it was handmade, and it makes it extra special that way.
Happy New Year! Well, like most of you, we're making a lot of resolutions that we might not keep, but we have a tradition where we like to start the new year off with a new craft.
And this year, we're trying quilling.
Quilling!
So quilling is basically the art of rolled paper. You can buy a kit online or you can make your own. The kits are really inexpensive, so we bought an inexpensive kit that we're gonna start with.
We're not sure if we're gonna like it, so we're just buying what we need.
Yes. It's so simple, anyone can do it. Pop on some TV and just roll your little papers.
I know, it's really satisfying.
Yes, you kind of get into that zone. Our kit came with a precision glue bottle,
Slotted tools,
tweezers,
scissors,
and of course paper. All right, so we're gonna start showing you some basic coils. We're gonna start with a tight coil with no space in between the rolls of paper. They have a little slit here in the center and just roll as evenly as possible. We don't want any tornadoes or anything like that.
A tornado is when it becomes uneven.
Yeah. And then kind of guide your finger, your forefinger and your thumb to kind of keep it even. And then we are just gonna roll, trying to keep the paper as even as possible as we spin. We're just gonna roll with it. You know?
Ayo.
Hey!
I'm done. I finished first.
Well, bravo for you.
Thank you. All right, and so for the tight coil, you're just gonna glue the end. It's really important to use less glue than you think. Less is more for quilling.
A little dab will do ya.
A little dab will do ya.
All right, and we have our first coil.
Okay.
Oh,
I might have finished
I
first.
won.
But yours looks pretty good.
Mine looks nice.
Okay, let's
I'm
have a
not gonna lie.
competition.
All right, quilling wars.
Okay, we're gonna teach you more basics, but like it's gonna be on. Well, we love this precision glue bottle because it has such a fine tip, but because it's so small, it can get clogged up, so we have a tip for you. What you need is a damp sponge, a bowl, and I'm just gonna cut out the sponge about the size of the bowl, and then this will allow us to have our glue bottle pointed down just so the glue is always ready, and it'll keep the tip wet just so it doesn't clog up. All right, next we're gonna do a loose coil. It's really similar to the tight coil, but at the end, we're just gonna open it up. Put the paper in the slot.
Hold it with your thumb and your forefinger.
So when you get to the end, you're gonna take out the tool, hold it in your fingers, and then
This is the magic.
You're loosely gonna open up your coil. I like to hold my center a little bit. That is a nice
Loose coil.
That is a nice loose coil.
I like to just let mine fly open.
All right, so the same thing, we're just gonna use a little bit of glue right on the end.
There we go. There's the loose coil. Who won this one?
I did. I won this one.
And now we're gonna show you how to do a teardrop coil. Again, it starts the same way as the regular tight and loose coil. And then once you get to the end there, you're gonna glue it. And then we like to put our seams wherever we're gonna pinch and manipulate the paper to create the shape. So I'm going to have the seam on the top there, and I'm going to squeeze to make the teardrop shape and just kind of manipulate the center of the paper down a little bit and then squeeze into a teardrop. Look how cute that is.
And now we're gonna make a curved teardrop, which is the same way as a teardrop, but at the top, we're going to use our quilling tool and just curve the tip. Well, I'll give it to you. I'll give this one to you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be
all
here.
right.
And now we're going to teach you the marquee. We're gonna roll a coil and then open it up to create a loose coil, glue it at the seam, and then squeeze both ends.
And so I'm actually just gonna shift my inner circle just so I don't squeeze it, and then pinch right on the other side. It almost looks like an eye. I think I won this one.
I agree.
Keep it going, because we're on a roll.
Let me see your hands over your head, people. Hey! Oh!
And next we're gonna do a variation on the marquee, a double curved marquee. Same thing. You're gonna pinch both ends, and then you're just gonna curve them in opposite directions.
And I'm gonna use the slotted tool here. There we go.
So cute.
And this one is also known as the slug.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yes.
It's like really hard at this point to like pick the best.
I know. They all always look so cute.
Yes.
We're both winners.
Aww.
And for our last, we're gonna show you how to do a square and also a diamond. They're two of the same, basically. The square, we're going to roll like a tight coil, open it up, and then pinch sides like a marquee on each side. And now we're gonna do the diamond. Shine bright like a
Diamond.
And this is the basic shape of the square, but instead you just kind of want to pinch it a little more until it looks like a little diamond.
Aww. Like the North Star. Hey, looks pretty good.
Very cute, very cute. All right, now that we know some basic coils and techniques of how to roll the paper, we're gonna try our first time to create some artwork using our quilling.
Yeah, and we're gonna go with the space theme because
Obviously.
we always do a space theme. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna splatter the paper with just a little bit of gold paint, just to give it a little bit of interest. Our paper is dry, we cut it to the size of the frame we're using, and now we're going to create a circle for the shape of our planet.
You only want to use a little bit of glue on each piece of paper, and then I'm going to use a Metro card. You can use any kind of thing to just disperse the glue. Remember we talked about a little dab will do ya.
A little dab.
So you don't need a lot of glue.
And you'll see how I'm gonna use that in just a second. I'm just going to glue the ends to create a circle. Just like that. I am gonna cut off this little overhang. So now I'm gonna take this glue and I'm actually just going to lightly press the edges. Let's see. This plant is poisonous to it.
You can't eat that, baby.
So now I'm going to place the circle right in the center of the paper.
We're gonna break up our planet into different sections. So we're gonna create a kind of a swoosh of the planet right in the center. We're going to do the same thing that Andrew did with the circle.
We're going to add another element to it. You can take two pieces of quilling paper and put them together and quill at the same time, and that's gonna add a little bit of dimension.
And then we're gonna group similar quill techniques together.
And we're finally gonna start using our tweezers just to start laying everything in. It's really hard to do it with our fingers, especially when they're stubby like yours.
Wow. It's okay if I say it, but when he says it. All right, so we created a planet and now we're just gonna finish it off by adding some stars around it.
What planet do you think this is?
Mars.
Mars, Jupiter, Pluto. Is that still a planet?
I don't think so.
One day it is, the next day it's
It
not.
was when I was growing up.
To finish it off, we're gonna pop it in a shadow box. You wanna use a shadow box rather than a frame because it is three-dimensional.
Yes.
And it's just gonna elevate the whole project. All right, so new year, new craft. Now the question is, to quill or not to quill?